I grew up in a small town, in a modest 2-story house with my parents, and my older sister Grace. She was just 2 years older than me, but sometimes it felt like we lived in completely different worlds. My father owned a small cafe that brought in enough to keep us comfortable, while Mom stayed home and occasionally helped out at the restaurant. It wasn't a luxurious life, but we got by. Well, most of us did. "Grace, sweetheart, that presentation was absolutely brilliant," I remember Mom gushing one evening after a school event. "You're going to go so far in life. You're just so talented." I stood in the doorway, still holding my own certificate from the science fair, but nobody seemed to notice. It was always like that. Grace was the star, and I was the shadow. That was the pattern of my childhood. Grace got the latest iPhone while I inherited her old one with the cracked screen. She wore designer clothes while I got her hand-me-downs. Every family gathering became a showcase of Grace's achievements. "Did you hear about Grace's SAT scores?" Dad would proudly tell our relatives. "Top percentile. And she's president of the debate club too." I learned to fade into the background during these conversations, knowing my straight B's and position as treasurer of the environmental club wouldn't merit a mention. It wasn't that I was doing poorly, I was doing fine. But in our house, fine might as well have been failure. "Stella," Mom said to me once, when I was helping her fold laundry, "you should really think about practical career options. Maybe something in retail or service? There's nothing wrong with honest work." The word stung, but I'd gotten used to the constant reminders of my perceived limitations. What I hadn't gotten used to was the way they seemed to actively work to reinforce them. Looking back now, I realize that those early years were setting the stage for everything that would follow. The constant comparisons, the subtle put-downs, the clear message that I was somehow less than my sister, it all left marks that would take years to heal. But sometimes the deepest wounds become the strongest motivations, and my family had no idea how their treatment would eventually come back to shape all our futures. I still remember the day Grace got her college acceptance letter. The whole house erupted in celebration. Mom made her favorite dinner, Dad brought home an expensive bottle of wine, and they spent the entire evening making plans for her future. "Our brilliant girl is going to one of the best colleges in the city," Mom couldn't stop beaming. "We've been saving for this moment since you were born, sweetheart." I sat quietly at the dinner table, pushing food around my plate, trying to imagine what my own celebration would be like in 2 years. I should have known better. When my turn came, the response couldn't have been more different. I'd worked hard to maintain good grades, joined clubs, and even took extra courses to boost my college applications. But none of that seemed to matter. "College?" Mom's laugh was sharp and dismissive when I brought up the subject. "Stella, be realistic. We just can't afford to send you to. Besides, you're not really college material." "But what about all the money you saved for Grace?" I asked, my voice shaking. Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably. "That was different. Grace had a clear path, exceptional grades. Well, you're more suited for practical work. Speaking of which, I could use another waitress at the cafe." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I could work while studying," I pleaded. "Please, just help me get started. We could borrow from relatives, or take out a loan. I'll pay back every penny with interest. I'll even get it in writing with a lawyer." "We never borrow from anyone in principle," Mom said coldly. "We don't borrow money, and we're not going to change our principles for you. You need to accept your limitations and find a suitable job." I spent that night crying in my room, but by morning, determination had replaced my tears. I went to the only people who had ever truly seen me, my grandparents. "Grandpa, Grandma, I need your help," I explained everything through tears at their kitchen table. "I can't just give up on college. I can't." Grandpa's eyes were filled with a mixture of anger and sadness. "We don't have savings, sweetheart, but let me see what I can do. No grandchild of mine is going to have their dreams crushed like this." The next few weeks were a roller coaster of emotions. First, the disappointment of the bank rejecting the loan application. Then, the shocking moment when Grandpa announced he was selling their old country house and the plot of land it sat on. The sale of the property provided exactly enough for my college tuition. I applied to study investment management in a city far from home, as far as I could get from the constant reminders of my family's lack of faith in me. The day I left, Mom and Dad didn't even come to say goodbye. Only my grandparents stood at the bus station, Grandma hugging me tight while Grandpa wiped away what he tried to pretend weren't tears. From that day forward, I cut ties with my parents completely. When breaks came and I had to return to town, I stayed with my grandparents in their now smaller house. Their sacrifice meant everything to me, and every time I walked into their modest home, I was reminded of what real family support looked like. After 4 years of hard work, I finally graduated with my degree in investment management. I returned to my hometown with big dreams and a freshly printed diploma, but reality hit hard. The job market wasn't exactly welcoming to new graduates, and I spent weeks sending out applications without any promising responses. Eventually, I landed a position at a small trading company. It wasn't the prestigious investment firm I'd imagined working for, but it was a start. I found a modest apartment on the outskirts of town, nothing fancy, but it was mine, paid for with my own money. Then came the call I never expected. "Stella?" Grace's voice was sugary sweet on the phone. "It's been ages. You should come over for dinner this weekend. I'd love to catch up." Something in her tone should have warned me, but I agreed. Maybe time had changed things. Maybe we could finally have a real relationship as adults. I couldn't have been more wrong. When I arrived at Grace's house that evening, I immediately knew I'd walked into a trap. My parents were already there, along with Grace's boyfriend, a slick-looking guy in an expensive suit who barely acknowledged my existence. The interrogation began as soon as we sat down to eat. "So, Stella," Mom started, her fork poised midair, "tell us about this job of yours." "I'm working at a trading company," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's small, but..." Grace cut in with a laugh. "Trading company? You mean like those discount stores? Honestly, you didn't need a college degree for that. Anyone could walk in off the street and get that job." Unlike Grace, Mom beamed, "who's a manager at the city bank. And Thomas here is a lawyer with Anderson and Pierce." Grace's boyfriend nodded smugly. "Top law firm in the state." "I told you college wasn't necessary for you, dear," Mom sighed. "Such a waste of your grandfather's property." Dad chuckled, swirling his wine glass. "Hey, my offer still stands. I could use an educated waitress at the cafe. Think how impressed the customers would be. Would you like fries with that? From someone with a college degree." They all laughed, except me. I stared at my plate, pushing the food around, just like I used to do as a child. "Where did you say you're living now?" Grace asked, though I hadn't mentioned it yet. "I found a place on Cedar Street," I replied quietly. The table erupted in theatrical gasps. "Cedar Street?" Grace's eyes widened in mock concern. "Oh, Stella, that's literally the worst neighborhood in the city. Only..." She paused for effect. "Well, you know, people who can't afford better live there." "Beggars, she means beggars," Mom stage whispered, and they all laughed again. Something inside me snapped. For years of distance hadn't changed anything, they were still the same cruel, judgmental people they'd always been. I stood up so abruptly, my chair scraped loudly against the floor. "You know what? I'd rather be a beggar than be like any of you," I spat out. "At least I got where I am on my own, without riding on someone else's coattails or living off Daddy's money." I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, ignoring their protests and accusations. As I walked out into the night, I promised myself it would be the last time I ever set foot in their presence. Life has a funny way of surprising you just when you think you've hit a dead end. I was still working at the small trading company, doing my best but feeling stuck, when my phone rang one afternoon. It was Lisa, my old college roommate. "Stella, you're not going to believe this," she was practically shouting with excitement. "Remember how we always talked about working for Maxwell Investment Group? They're opening an office in your city, and they're looking for fresh talent. I already put in a good word for you." My heart started racing. Maxwell was one of the biggest names in investment management. I spent that night updating my resume and the next week preparing for the interview. When I walked into their temporary office, I felt like everything in my life had been leading to this moment. The interview wasn't easy. They grilled me on everything from market trends to specific investment strategies. But all those extra hours I'd put in at my current job, all the additional research I'd done in my free time, it all paid off. A week later, I got the call. I was in. From day one, I threw myself into the work. While others went home at 5, I stayed late, developing new investment strategies and refining my project proposals. My first major project was managing a portfolio for a mid-sized tech company. When it yielded a 40% return in the first quarter, people started noticing. "Stella, this is exceptional work," my supervisor said during my 6-month review. Along with his praise came a bonus that was larger than my entire year's salary at the previous company. But it wasn't enough. I worked harder, took on bigger projects, built a reputation for turning struggling investments into gold mines. The bonuses kept getting bigger, and I had a plan for every penny. 2 years after starting at Maxwell, I walked into a luxury car dealership. The salesman probably thought I was lost until I pointed to their top-of-the-line model and said, "I'll take that one." An hour later, I was pulling up to my grandparents' house in a gleaming new car, complete with a giant red bow on top. Grandpa's jaw dropped when I handed him the keys. But I wasn't done. The next month, I closed on a stunning apartment in the Heights, the most prestigious new development in the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows, marble countertops, and a view that made you feel like you owned the whole city. I was walking out of my building one morning, coffee in hand, when I heard a familiar voice. "Stella?" Grace stood there in her designer workout gear, looking like she'd seen a ghost. "What are you doing here?" I took a slow sip of my coffee, savoring the moment. "Oh, I live here," I said casually, pointing to the penthouse level of the building. "Just bought it, actually." The look on Grace's face was priceless, a mixture of disbelief, shock, and something else. For the first time in our lives, I saw envy in my perfect sister's eyes. A week after my encounter with Grace, my phone rang. Seeing my parents' number on the screen was surprising enough. They hadn't called me in years. Even more surprising was that they were in the neighborhood and wanted to stop by. I agreed, more out of curiosity than anything else. When they walked into my apartment, their expressions were priceless. Mom's eyes darted from the panoramic windows to the designer furniture, while Dad stood awkwardly in the entrance, as if afraid to touch anything. "This is quite impressive," Mom managed, running her finger along my marble kitchen counter. "You must be doing very well for yourself." "I am," I replied simply, offering them seats on my Italian leather sofa. They exchanged glances before Mom cleared her throat. "Well, we actually have some news. Grace is engaged to Thomas. They announced it last month at the engagement party." An engagement party I hadn't been invited to, of course. "They're planning the wedding for 6 months from now," Mom continued, her voice getting that familiar wheedling tone I remembered from childhood. "We've offered to pay half the expenses, as is traditional." Dad shifted uncomfortably. "But it seems the total budget is, well, it's $300,000. I nearly choked on my water. $300,000? Thomas's family has certain expectations, Mom explained quickly. They're very prominent in the community. We announced we'd cover half before we knew the amount, and now. She trailed off, looking at me meaningfully. "Now you need $150,000, I finished for her." "Exactly," Mom brightened. "And since you're doing so well, living in this beautiful apartment, working at such a prestigious firm. You want me to give you the money," I said flatly. "Loan," Dad interjected. "We're asking for a loan. We'll pay you back, of course. We'll even get it notarized." "We know it's a lot," Mom said quickly, "but we can't back out now. It would be so embarrassing with Thomas's family." They're expecting a certain standard. Like when I wanted to go to college? I interrupted. When I begged you for help? When I offered to sign a legal document promising to pay you back? Mom's face flushed. That was different. Different how? Because it was me asking? Because you told me you don't borrow money on principle? Stella, be reasonable, Dad started. Reasonable? I stood up. Like you were reasonable when you told me I wasn't college material? When you offered me a waitress job instead of helping me get an education? When you let Grandpa sell his property to help me, while you saved all your money for Grace? That's not fair, Mom protested. No, what's not fair is that you're only here because you need something from me. You didn't invite me to the engagement party, you haven't spoken to me in years, and now you want $150,000? I walked to the door and opened it. I don't loan money on principle. I believe that's a family tradition, isn't it? Mom's face turned red with anger. How dare you throw our words back at us? After everything we've done for you. Everything you've done for me? I laughed bitterly. Please leave, now. They stormed out, Mom muttering about ingratitude and Dad avoiding eye contact. As I closed the door behind them, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in my life, I'd stood up to them on my own terms, in my own home, from a position of strength. My phone rang again the next day. This time it was Grace. What is wrong with you? She didn't even bother with a hello. Mom told me what happened. How can you be so selfish? I sat back in my office chair, watching the sunset through my panoramic windows. Selfish? That's rich coming from you, Grace. We're family, Stella. Family helps each other. You have the money, everyone knows you're doing well now. Why won't you help with my wedding? I could almost laugh at the absurdity. Family? Now suddenly I'm family? What about when I was visiting your house and you all called me a beggar? When you mocked where I lived? When you laughed at my job? Was I family then? That was different, Grace protested. We were just teasing. You're being ridiculous now. No, what's ridiculous is that none of you spoke to me for years until you needed something. If you need money so badly, why don't you ask our parents? They're your real family, after all. They made that clear enough over the years. You bitter, ungrateful bitch, Grace exploded. You think you're so much better than us now with your fancy apartment and your big job? You're still the same pathetic little sister who was never good enough. The line went dead as she hung up. I sat there for a moment, surprised to find that her words didn't hurt anymore. They just made me tired. A week later, I was having Sunday dinner at my grandparents' house, a tradition I'd kept up ever since college. Grandma was unusually quiet as she served the pot roast. Your parents called us yesterday, Grandpa finally said, his voice heavy. I put down my fork. Let me guess, they asked for money for the wedding? Grandma nodded. They're getting desperate, I think. Your mother had quite a lot to say about family obligations. When we told them we're retired and don't have that kind of money, Grandpa continued, your mother had the nerve to suggest we sell something. She said, well, you sold the land for Stella's college, didn't you? She suggested we sell the car. The car I gave you? I was stunned. She actually suggested you sell your gift? That's when I hung up on her, Grandpa said, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. Told her that unlike some people, we don't sell gifts from family members who actually care about us. Grandma reached across the table and squeezed my hand. The three of us sat there in understanding silence, bound together by something stronger than mere blood ties. Word travels fast in a small town, and my parents made sure it traveled even faster. Within weeks, their version of events had spread through our entire extended family and social circle. I started hearing snippets of their carefully crafted narrative from various sources. Did you hear about the younger daughter? My mother's friend loudly gossiped at the local grocery store, not realizing I was in the next aisle. Got some fancy job and now she thinks she's too good for her own family. Won't even speak to them anymore, says they're too poor for her now. At church, relatives would shoot disapproving glances my way when I visited with my grandparents. My Aunt Martha called one evening, heavy with judgment. "Your mother told me you wouldn't even let her into your apartment when she came to visit. How could you treat your own mother that way?" I could have corrected the record. Could have told everyone how my parents had only reached out when they needed money, how they'd never supported my dreams, how they'd mocked and belittled me at every turn. But I'd learned long ago that trying to defend yourself against toxic people only gives them more ammunition. Instead, I focused on my work, spent time with my grandparents, and let the gossip swirl around me like autumn leaves in the wind. My grandparents knew the truth, they'd lived through every moment of it with me, and that was enough. But with 2 weeks left before the wedding, Grace made one final attempt. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, wearing her most expensive outfit and her most convincing smile. "Stella, we need to talk," she said, brushing past me into the living room. "This has gone on long enough. We're sisters, we shouldn't be fighting like this." I stood by the window, arms crossed, watching her settle herself on my sofa as if she owned it. "Why are you really here, Grace?" "To make peace." She gave me her best pageant winner smile. "And, to help you understand the situation better. You see, Thomas's parents are not just rich, they're old money. They have connections everywhere. The wedding has to be perfect." I waited, knowing there was more. "The final payments are due next week, the restaurant deposit, the wedding planner's fee, the flowers." She twisted her engagement ring nervously. "If Mom and Dad can't contribute their share, it's going to be so embarrassing. Thomas's parents will find out they couldn't afford it. It won't just reflect badly on Mom and Dad, it'll reflect on me. On my future with Thomas. So this visit isn't really about reconciling. It's about the money." "No." "Well, yes, but..." She stood up and walked over to me, placing her hand on my arm. "Stella, please. You're my sister, I need your help. We need to make a great impression on Thomas's parents." I gently removed her hand, walked to the door, and opened it. "I don't care about impressing Thomas's parents. I don't care about your perfect wedding. And I definitely don't care what any of you think anymore. You're making a huge mistake," she said, her voice trembling with anger. "You'll regret this." I smiled, feeling genuinely at peace. "No, Grace. For the first time in my life, I'm absolutely certain I won't." A few days after Grace's visit, my phone lit up with a text from Sarah, her college friend who'd always been kind to me. She thought I should know what had happened at the country club the previous evening. "Your parents finally had to come clean to Thomas's family," she wrote. "They couldn't dodge the wedding planner's calls anymore. It was apparently quite a scene." I could picture it clearly, the elegant country club dining room, Thomas's wealthy parents in their designer clothes, the moment my parents had to admit they couldn't afford their share of the wedding expenses. According to Sarah, Thomas's mother had practically turned purple with rage. The carefully planned fairy tale wedding began to unravel. The honeymoon suite in the Maldives, cancelled. The vintage champagne order, scaled back. The designer flower arrangements, simplified. Thomas's parents eventually agreed to cover all the expenses themselves, but the damage was done. The wedding did go forward, though scaled down from its original grandeur. I wasn't invited, of course, but I didn't expect to be. My grandparents received an invitation but declined to attend, sending a polite note about prior commitments. We spent that Saturday together instead, having a picnic in their backyard, steadfastly avoiding any mention of the event taking place across town. A week later, the wedding photos appeared on social media. I found myself scrolling through them one evening, wine glass in hand, studying the faces in each carefully staged shot. There was Grace in her designer gown. Thomas looked stiff and formal, his family arranged around him like expensive statues. And my parents, they were easy to spot in their new outfits, probably bought on credit, trying so hard to look like they belonged in this world of old money and country club memberships. But their smiles were strained, their poses awkward. Thomas's parents appeared in only a few photos, their expressions ranging from barely concealed disdain to outright displeasure. In one particularly telling shot, his mother was caught looking at my parents with the kind of expression usually reserved for something unpleasant found on the bottom of one's shoe. Sarah texted me updates occasionally in the weeks that followed. Grace and Thomas moved into a house his parents had bought them as a wedding gift. My parents rarely visited. Apparently, they weren't quite what Thomas's family had envisioned for Sunday dinners. I haven't spoken to my parents or Grace since before the wedding. I doubt I ever will again. But sitting here in my apartment, watching the sunset paint the city sky in shades of gold, I finally feel at peace with that fact. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes.
Hello, I'm Ally, a 29-year-old woman. I grew up in a single-parent home after my dad passed away when I was very young. My mom never remarried and worked tirelessly to feed and clothe me. She never hesitated to share her struggles with me, which made me feel deeply indebted to her, even when she treated me poorly. My mom often complained about the hard work she put in to provide for me, yet she constantly criticized me for my weight. I remember the first time I felt self-hatred. I was 8 years old, and my mom caught me eating a bar of chocolate after dinner. She yelled at me, saying I was getting too fat and ugly for her liking. This only worsened as the years went by. I tried talking to her, but it never helped. Only more insults came my way. The irony was that I wasn't even fat or ugly. I was of normal weight for my age and height, and I received a fair amount of attention from boys. I couldn't understand why my mom hated me so much. When I turned 18, I wanted to move out, but I didn't have the funds. So I stayed with my mom while attending college. It was there that I had my first boyfriend. He was charming, handsome, and your typical jock. I fell madly in love with him. We got together in our second year and stayed together until shortly after graduation. I was convinced he was the one for me. Of course, my mom hated that I had a boyfriend and would always praise him while simultaneously insulting me. This didn't help my already fragile self-esteem. My boyfriend and I decided to wait a year before getting married. However, 2 months later, he suddenly broke up with me. I was confused and hurt. When I asked him why, he just looked at me with disgust. In that moment, I sought comfort from my mother, but instead of consoling me, she laughed and said, "Thank God he left. He deserves so much better than you." I was shocked. "What do you mean?" I asked. She replied, "He was madly in love with you, but with a little nudge from me, he saw the light." "Are you saying you made him break up with me? What did you say to him?" "Oh, nothing you don't already know. I just opened his eyes to how ugly you are. Once he saw it, he didn't want to marry you." "What's wrong with you? How could you do this to your daughter?" "Stop being so dramatic, Ally. I know you're sad, but for your own sake, don't indulge in sweets. It'll make you gain more weight." That was my breaking point. I had saved up a decent amount of money from working part-time. That night, while my mom was asleep, I packed my things and moved out. I stayed at a friend's place until I got my own apartment. It took a long time to heal, but eventually, I started putting myself out there more and regained my confidence. Sometimes I felt sad that my mom never made an effort to call or check up on me, but I got over it. Once I felt better, I would check in on her occasionally but kept our contact minimal. Then I met Holt. We bumped into each other at a coffee shop and ended up sitting in the same booth because the place was full. We started talking, and he turned out to be an amazing guy with a great sense of humor. We exchanged numbers, and the rest is history. Holt and I dated for 3 years before deciding to make it official. During those 3 years, I got to know Holt's family, who accepted me with open arms. This was a very healing experience for me. I told Holt about my history with my mom, and needless to say, he wasn't her biggest fan. I was incredibly happy to be marrying Holt. I felt like I was on top of the world. It was amazing to be loved by someone so wonderful. My looks didn't matter, and part of me wanted to shove that in my mother's face. I knew it would be petty, but when your own mother bullies you about your looks from the age of 5 until adulthood, you're bound to feel that way. Holt and I began planning the wedding immediately after we got engaged. I kept my idea of revenge on the back burner because I wasn't sure if it was morally right. About 2 months into the planning, Holt asked me about the guest list. "So, who are you thinking of inviting?" "Well, my close family and friends. I don't think I'll have a lot of people to invite. All right, I don't mean to be insensitive, but when you say family, are you asking if I'm going to invite my mom? Yeah, I know it's a sensitive topic, but I just want some confirmation. I was actually thinking of inviting her. Oh, really? How come? Okay, I know this will sound mean, but I kind of want to rub it in her face. I've become who she always told me I wouldn't be. She used to constantly tell me that no man would ever love me because of my looks, but here I am. Oh, honey, I don't think that's mean at all. In fact, I fully support it. It's the least mean thing I've ever heard, but it's perfect considering everything that your mother put you through. Really? So you're okay with it? I am, as long as you are. Although I will say that if your mother says anything rude to you, I will interfere. That's absolutely okay. Thanks for supporting me. That's exactly what I'm here for, isn't it? It felt great to have Holt validate my feelings. He knew about the extent of the damage my mom did to my self-esteem, and yet he was more than willing to accommodate me. I felt a new wave of excitement. I couldn't wait to brag to my mom about my marriage. Not only was I marrying a rich and handsome man, but also a man who showed me in every way possible that he loved me more than anything. That was definitely going to embarrass my mom. As we finalized the technicalities of the invitation, like the look, fonts, and paper, I couldn't help but wonder how my mom would react. Would she go red in the face from humiliation? Would she apologize? Would she, for once, be proud of me? I know I seem naive to only think about the best-case scenarios, but I couldn't help it. Even though I barely contacted her anymore, she was still the only parent I had, and I wanted some form of a relationship with her. Don't get me wrong, I would never forgive her that easily. She put me through years of therapy because of her bullying. I would make sure she apologized properly before cautiously building a relationship with her. Whenever I had a negative thought about her reaction, I pushed it away because I didn't know how I would deal with it. When it came time to print the invitations, Holt and I sat together and hand-wrote the names of our guests. We wanted to do a traditional handwritten invitation. When I was writing my mother's name, Holt was looking over my shoulder. That's when he held my hand to stop me. I looked at him in confusion. Is everything okay? Yeah, it's just. Do you not want me to invite my mom? No, it's not that. That's your mom's full name? Yeah, why? You guys have different last names. Oh yeah, my mom kept her maiden name after she got married. I got my dad's name. That's funny. Why? What's wrong? I don't know if it's a coincidence, but I have an employee with that same exact name. What? That's crazy. Yeah, she plans to retire in another year or two. This is super weird. I mean, your mom's name and maiden name are not very common. Do you think? I don't know which company she works for, but do you maybe have files of your employees on hand or even a staff picture? Oh yeah, of course I do. Holt shot up from the couch and ran into his office. My heart was pounding. What were the chances? I had always believed the world was small, but for it to be this small was crazy. Holt came back with his laptop in hand, and we sat down together to find a picture of the woman with the same name as my mom. Thankfully, the company had just had an event recently and a lot of pictures were taken. Holt and I scrolled through the pictures before I finally saw her. It was my mom, laughing at something someone had said. She was holding a drink, laughing at something someone had said. I stared in shock for a couple of seconds before bursting out in laughter. Holt asked if that was my mom, and I confirmed it. He didn't know much about her beyond why I kept my contact with her minimal. We shared a laugh because it was truly amazing how the universe had aligned to put my mother in her place. Not only was I marrying a rich and handsome man who loved me, but I was also marrying my mom's boss. That was definitely something I wanted to brag about. I hoped for her sake that she would be on her best behavior because she had no idea what she could be risking if she tried to say anything against me. When we finally sent out the invites, we received a ton of responses almost immediately. I tracked them to ensure they reached their destination safely. When I saw that my mom's invitation had been delivered, I anxiously waited for her response. But over a week went by, and I heard nothing. I began to lose hope that my mom would come to my wedding. I tried to tell myself it was no big deal, but she was my only parent and getting married was the biggest event in anyone's life. Of course, I wanted my mom there, even if she just sat silently. Holt could see that I was down and comforted me. He reminded me that regardless of whether my mom came, it would still be our day, and we would be surrounded by people who loved us. I began to feel better, but I wasn't fully convinced. Then finally, my mom's RSVP came in. She said yes. That was it, just yes. It hurt that she didn't even call to ask about who I was marrying or inquire about the wedding. But at least she would be there. I messaged her, asking if she would like to be part of the rehearsal dinner, and she replied with another simple yes. Having my mom there was a win. A small win, but a win nonetheless. I felt happy. On the day of the rehearsal dinner, I was a nervous wreck. Meeting my mom after 3 years made me anxious. I made sure my dress was perfect, my hair was in place, and my makeup was flawless. I couldn't help but think that I didn't even make that much effort for Holt. My mom walked into the rehearsal dinner and found me immediately. Holt was busy talking to someone else in the hall, so she didn't notice him. She made a beeline for me. My hands got clammy as she approached, but I calmed myself, reminding myself that I had the upper hand. She greeted me with a hug before looking me up and down and laughing. I felt myself shrivel up inside, like the helpless little girl I used to be. "So who's the unlucky guy? I see you still haven't become skinny, so you must have found some ugly hobo." "Mom, that's beyond rude. Oh please, whoever is choosing to marry you while you look like this must be clearly blind and very unlucky. Actually, I think you're the unlucky one, Quinn." "Holt, what are you doing here? What do you think? Didn't his name look familiar to you at all?" "Well, yeah, but I didn't think." "You didn't think what? That your daughter would be capable of marrying someone like me because you think she's too ugly? Or am I enough of a hobo to be able to marry your daughter?" "No, well, I didn't mean it like that. Look, you're on thin ice. It's bad enough that you've insulted me, but if I hear you say one more word against Allie, I swear I will make your life miserable." "Okay, but I must say, Allie, you're an absolute piece of work for purposely going after my boss. What did you think it would do for you? Did you think I would go easier on you?" "I didn't purposely go after your boss. We only found out when we were sending the invite, but I did hope to mend our relationship. I guess that won't be happening. Enjoy the rest of the dinner, and I'll see you tomorrow." Holt and I walked away hand in hand. Once we were out of her sight, we dissolved into laughter. The look of absolute horror on her face when she saw Holt was unforgettable. I had hoped for a much nicer interaction, but seeing her put in her place was actually more satisfying. I was so caught up in my emotions that I didn't even notice Holt walk up to us. But I was glad he had managed to come right in time. The rest of the evening passed without any other incidents. The next day was hectic. However, when it came time for the ceremony, all I could feel was immense pride. Seeing Holt stand at the altar with tears in his eyes as he watched me walk down the aisle made all the hours of getting ready worth it. I happened to scan the crowd and spotted my mom. She noticed me looking at her and pulled a face. The same face she always made whenever she thought I looked ugly or fat. I stumbled for a second, questioning everything. I knew I looked beautiful, but seeing my mom's expression made me feel very insecure. I looked at Holt and all my doubts vanished. He still looked at me like I was the only girl in the room. Other than that, the ceremony went off without a hitch. Holt and I exchanged our vows through tears, and the crowd cheered as we kissed. On our way to the reception hall, I told Holt what had happened earlier. "So something happened during the ceremony," I began. "What happened? Are you okay?" Holt asked, concerned. "Oh yeah, I'm fine now," I assured him. "Good, then tell me what happened." "Well, when I was walking down the aisle and I stumbled a little." "Yeah, I was a little worried. I happened to look into the crowd and saw my mother making the same face she always made to tell me I didn't look good. My God, what the hell is wrong with that woman? How could she do that to her own daughter on her special day? I don't know, but in that moment, all I wanted to do was run away and cry. But then I took one look at you and felt all right. That's right. If your mother does something like that again, just look at me. You're beautiful and nothing your mother says or does will ever change that." "Thanks, I needed that. And I was serious when I said I would take action if your mom did something against you again. Now that I know just how much leverage I have over her, you best believe I will make sure she learns her lesson properly, and I'll be okay with whatever you do." The reception started off well. We began with dancing and drinking, and everyone was having a great time. Holt and I greeted all our guests and had conversations with them. I found myself feeling better with each interaction. At some point, I saw my mom walk into the hall, but she ignored us and went straight to the bar. I felt a little bad, but figured being ignored was better than being told I looked ugly again. So I let it go. Holt kept me by his side the entire time, which I appreciated because it was a great distraction. Finally, it was time for the toasts. Holt started with a heartfelt toast to us and our relationship, which made me cry. I followed with my own toast, and I was happy to see that I made him feel the same emotions he made me feel. If there was one thing to mention about the toasts, it was that with every toast made to Holt and me, my mom scoffed. She received a lot of dirty looks, but that didn't stop her. At some point, she stood up and said she had a toast to give us. My heart dropped. I knew my mother, and I knew how evil she could be. I knew this would not end well. Holt held my hand, and when I looked at him, his jaw was clenched. At least we both felt the same anxiety at that moment. My mom began talking about how I was undeserving of Holt. She praised Holt for being a great boss and a wonderful man, then conveniently brought up that he was her boss. When she spoke of me, she kept talking about how ugly I was and how I should be grateful that Holt even spared me a glance. I felt sick. How could she say that? Holt looked like he was going to burst a vein from how hard he was restraining himself. The rest of our guests looked appalled. Finally, when my mother finished her awful speech, she sat down with a satisfied smirk on her face, happy with the reactions she got. Thankfully, the rest of the evening proceeded without anyone mentioning what my mom had said. Holt and I tried our best to put it behind us for the night. Even when we got back home, neither of us spoke about it. There was an air of sadness, but we chose to ignore it because we were happy to be legally and officially together. The next day, Holt left for work. He told me something urgent had come up, but promised to be back by noon, so I didn't mind. True to his word, Holt came back home by noon, and we settled on the couch to watch some of our favorite shows. An hour later, I heard banging on the front door, along with my mom yelling for me to come out and open the door. I was confused and looked at Holt, sensing his urgent business had something to do with my mom. I walked to the door and opened it. "You absolute wretch. What did you say to him, huh?" she yelled. "What do you mean? Don't play dumb. You made him fire me." "Holt fired you." "Yeah, and I'm sure it's because of something you said. You're so stupid you never know what you say." "I'm going to have to stop you there, Quinn," Holt interjected. "I don't think I need to remind you of your speech from yesterday. You praised me and completely dissed your own daughter, who is my wife. How did you possibly think that was okay? I told you I'd make you regret it if you even said a word against her." "Whatever. You can't fire me for that. I'll sue you. You've also been highly negligent with your work. I was going to fire you anyway, but kept you for a few months only because you are Allie's mother. Since you have no respect for her, I see no reason to help you out. Now, if you'll excuse us, we're busy. Goodbye." I couldn't believe it. Holt stood up for me in a way I hadn't even considered. Holt held me in his arms as I cried. I finally felt free. I felt valued and respected, and I knew I never wanted anything less than that from then on. I didn't care to find out what happened to my mom after that, and neither did Holt. The two of us continued to live our lives in blissful ignorance of her whereabouts. I've learned just how important it is to have and enforce your boundaries. Don't let anyone treat you like you're worth nothing because, to someone else, you mean the world. Hello everyone, I'm Sarah, and this is my story. The story centers around my mother-in-law, Suzanne, who has been cut off from both me and my husband, Mason. She's also estranged from my father-in-law, Cody, due to her own actions. Let me tell you how it all happened. Buckle up, because this is a tale of serious karma. Mason and I have been together since high school. We were the quintessential high school sweethearts who made it to the finish line. Yes, Mason and I were deeply in love. My family adored him and welcomed him as one of their own. However, I hadn't met his family before our engagement. When I brought it up, Mason would say, "Why do you want to meet them, Sarah? I already told you, my mom is not a great person." Despite Mason's warnings, I insisted on meeting his family. I believed that no matter what, they were his family, and I wanted to try to have a good relationship with them. Cody and I met accidentally at an event, and he was charming and friendly, so I couldn't imagine Suzanne being that bad. How wrong I was. I finally met Suzanne after Mason proposed. Naturally, I said yes because he is the love of my life. At that time, he had a well-paying job, and I was running a successful knitwear business. Everyone said I was talented, and Mason was very supportive. With everything going well, We decided to get engaged and settle down. When I knew I would finally meet his family, Mason was anxious, and I soon understood why. Cody and Susan invited me to dinner at their house. The perfect opportunity to meet them in person. From the moment I arrived, Suzanne's judgmental gaze made me uneasy. The real tension began when we started discussing careers. I mentioned, I'm running a knitwear business. I learned the craft from my grandmother, and here's some of my work. Cody praised my work, saying, That's some great work, Sarah. I had no idea you were so talented. Mason added, She's good at this, isn't she? I keep encouraging her to expand her business. Suzanne, however, scoffed. Well, she should be unsure. This is far from impressive. Knitwear is so old-fashioned. Who even wears this crap? She's wasting her time on stupid hobbies. I can get these for $2 at Goodwill. You don't have to brag about her. Cody intervened. Suzanne, stop being childish. It's embarrassing. You have no right to humiliate Sarah. She is our guest and our future daughter-in-law. Oh please, Cody. She's the one with the embarrassing hobby. Who knits sweaters nowadays? I'm only speaking the truth. At least she's good at something, Suzanne. There's no need to put her down. You're being unfair. Someone needs to tell her the truth. Listen here, Sarah. Let me tell you something. No one is going to buy this. You're deluding yourself if you think otherwise. You need to look for better jobs. Mom, stop being so mean to her. What she does is none of your business. Leave her work alone. I'm just looking out for you, son. The way you and your father are drooling over her work, she may get the wrong idea about her skill. It's practically useless. I hope she understands that. That's Suzanne for you, folks. This woman is vile and extremely toxic. It was clear to everyone that she was jealous, though I couldn't fathom why. I had gone to the dinner hoping to make a good impression on both Susan and Cody. While Cody took a liking to me instantly, Susan was hostile and mean. When we got home, Mason said, Sarah, please don't mind my mother's words. She's always like that. This is exactly why I didn't want to introduce you to her. It's okay, Mason. Maybe she just feels a little uncomfortable with me. Did I do something wrong today? She seems to dislike me a lot. Babe, she's like that. She didn't like how Dad and I gushed over your business. She hates when someone compliments others. She's super jealous. That's one reason why we're not very close. I guess she sees you as competition now. But she doesn't have to worry about me. I hope she will understand eventually. I'll try my best to show her that I'm not competition. Well, that was super naive of me. Susan never changed. Despite my best efforts to reassure her, it only seemed to infuriate her more. She absolutely hated me and didn't want to be around me at all. However, since Cody liked me and I was Mason's fiancé, she had to tolerate me. Things never got better, even after Mason and I got married. In fact, she often went out of her way to insult me. Thankfully, Mason and Cody shut her down pretty quickly. By then, I was done being nice to her. I pretty much ignored her until one day, when I got a call while working on a commission at home. When I checked the number, I saw it was Susan. I was actually pretty surprised. Given the bad blood between us, I never thought she would want to talk to me. I picked up the phone and she said, Hello, Sarah. I hope I'm not disturbing you. Actually, I have an order for you. You know my birthday is coming up. Yes, I know, Suzanne. Cody called to invite Mason and me to the party. What do you need help with? Well, I was thinking if you could make me a nice sweater. It's getting cold outside, and a light sweater would be a nice addition to my wardrobe. Sure, Suzanne. I would love to make you a sweater. You know what? It can be your birthday present. Do you have a specific design in mind? Yes, actually, I do. I'll send you a picture. It's a bit complicated, though, and I was thinking about the color lavender. I've been wanting a lavender sweater for a while. I love that color. Are you sure you can put in the effort? Don't worry, Suzanne. It won't be a problem. Besides, we have plenty of time. I'll be happy to do it for my family. Great then, I'll send you the picture. Make sure it's ready for my birthday. I want to show it off to everyone. After hanging up, Susan sent me the picture. I was excited to start the work, even though I knew it was a difficult pattern. I wanted to please her and repair our bond, so I agreed to do it. When Mason got home, I told him everything. You know, Susan called me today. She said she wants me to make her a sweater. I think she's starting to come around. Seriously? Mom asked you to make her one? Yeah, she wants to wear it for her birthday next month. She does want a complicated design, but I can finish it in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. That's a lot of work, babe. My mom hasn't been nice to you. Are you sure you still want to do it? You can say no. I know, Mason. Frankly, I think it's a bit odd too, but I'm willing to give it a chance. Even if she doesn't like it, I can take it back and sell it. Keeping this in mind, I started working on the sweater. It turned out to be a difficult task due to the complicated patterns. I never showed Mason the final product because I wanted the birthday girl to see it first. I guess that was one of the many mistakes I made. Mason and I arrived early at Susan's birthday party. It was a grand event organized on the lawn of their home. Several family members and friends attended, and everyone was truly enjoying themselves. I handed Suzanne the gift and said, "Happy birthday, Suzanne. Here is your gift. Why don't you open it and see if you like it?" "Thanks, Sarah. I'll open it when everyone arrives. I want everyone to see what you got me. I bet they'll be jealous." "Sure, if that's what you want. I can't wait to see you wear it." Back then, I had no idea why she was stalling with my gift. She opened all the other presents but kept mine for the end. When everyone had arrived, she finally turned to the group and said, "I see that all of you are here. As you know, Sarah here likes to do some knitting in her spare time. I don't know if she's good at it, but we will see in a while. Let me just open her gift and find out." "Show us what you got. I'm sure it will be beautiful," someone chimed in. Susan opened the gift and saw the sweater. Everyone started murmuring praises, and I felt very happy. However, Cody and Mason looked a little confused. "Sarah, why did you give Mom a lavender sweater? She hates the color," Cody said. "Wait, what? I'm confused. Does she hate lavender?" "That can't be true," I replied. "Yes, she really does hate that color. Don't worry, it was an oversight. The sweater is super pretty though. I see you put in a lot of work," Cody reassured. "Yeah, she actually spent 3 weeks making it. I saw her struggle a lot but wanted to make it perfect," Mason added. "Well, this piece is trash. First of all, everyone knows I hate the color. She shouldn't have used it. Besides, I don't even like knitted wear." "Don't worry, I know exactly what I need to do with it," Susan said. Suddenly, Susan took the sweater and tore it apart. I was in shock, and so was the whole table. Honestly, it felt like someone had stabbed me in the chest. 3 weeks of hard work just went down the drain. My work was ruined and my heart broke. I could feel tears in my eyes. Susan looked satisfied with her work and smirked at me, saying, My, will you look at that?" I thought the color was horrible. Turns out the quality is equally bad. Good thing I tore it before someone saw me with this ugly sweater. Now I don't have to wear this hideous lavender thing. Why the hell would you do that? How can you be so heartless? I spent 3 weeks perfecting the design. Do you know how complicated this design was? How could you just tear it apart? I cried out. Like I said, I didn't like the color. It looks disgusting. I'm not an old lady who wears lavender. You should have thought about that before giving me that monstrous thing, Suzanne replied. Mom, you could have just returned the sweater. Why did you have to destroy it? That was horrible, Mason said, visibly upset. That would be dramatic, son. The sweater was clearly of cheap quality since it tore easily. I did myself a favor by getting rid of it. Your wife should have known better than to give me this atrocity, Suzanne retorted. I know the color is not your favorite, but you could have told her that, Suzanne. There was no reason for you to destroy the sweater, Cody added. I don't care if she didn't know I hated the color. She deserves this, period, Susan said coldly. Hearing those words made me absolutely furious. I couldn't believe the audacity of Susan. I understood that she planned to humiliate me all along. She made me work on the sweater so she could embarrass and laugh at me, but no one else was amused. Everyone looked horrified. Even Cody stared at the destroyed sweater in disbelief. That's when I knew it was time for revenge. I wiped my tears and took out my phone. Then I said, You have some nerve criticizing and destroying my hard work. I can't believe your audacity. You're telling everyone that you hate the color, but you are the one who told me to make a sweater in lavender. What? What are you talking about? I would never say that. I hate the color, Susan snapped back. That's not what you told me in your call. You're lying to everyone. I never said that. You're making things up now. You have no proof that I told you to use lavender, Suzanne insisted. I actually recorded the call to have a clear idea of what you wanted. Looks like I hit the jackpot with it. Here, let me play it for you. I took out my phone and played the recording. It clearly showed that Susan had played me dirty. When everyone heard it, they knew Susan had planned the entire thing. Susan turned pale and looked down at her hands. Mason and Cody looked ready to explode. When I stopped the recording, Mason said, "Mom, what the hell? Why would you do that? You always told us you hated lavender. Even after this, why did you tell Sarah to use that color?" "Obviously because she wanted to humiliate me today. Why else would she do this, Mason?" I interjected. No, that's not true. There's been some misunderstanding. This witch here is setting me up. I hate lavender. I would never ask her to make something like this," Susan stammered. "Mom, stop it. Everyone heard the recording. Why are you still lying? Is this because you're jealous of Sarah?" Mason demanded. "Why would I be jealous of her? She's a worthless girl. She deserved to have her nasty work destroyed." Susan snapped. "That's enough. How can you still lie to everyone and call Sarah a witch? And you want to see people get what they deserve? Let's get started then," Cody said sternly. "What do you mean, Cody? What are you going to do?" Suzanne asked, her voice trembling. "I'm going to divorce you. Enough is enough. I've dealt with your jealousy and destructive personality for years. I literally begged you to stop and get therapy, but you never listened to me. Today you crossed the line. I'm done with you." No, Cody. Please, how can you say that to me? I'm your wife. You can't frighten me like that," Suzanne pleaded. "I am not threatening you, Suzanne. I am serious about this. You won't be my wife for long. Now get out of this place before I say something stupid." Susan tried to argue, but no one would listen to her. Actually, everyone at the party started to berate her. Even her friends turned against her. It seemed she did have some good friends, but it also seemed they wouldn't associate with her anymore. Susan was crying and wailing at the top of her lungs. After some time, Cody gave her a stern warning and told her to go to her room. When she left, Cody apologized to me. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. You got humiliated in my house. I shouldn't have let it happen. Please forgive me." "No, Cody, please don't apologize. It's not your fault at all. This is all Suzanne's doing. I am at fault, Sarah. I should have dragged her to therapy or divorced her sooner. I kept enabling her, thinking she would change. Looks like it will never happen. This time, I won't forgive her." Honestly speaking, I felt bad for both Mason and Cody. Mason already didn't have a good relationship with his mom, and this event made it even worse. He told Cody that he wouldn't be in contact with Susan again. The people at the party supported both Mason and Cody. They even complimented my work and told me I had talent. I surprisingly got some new orders from them. Overall, the event went well for me. When we returned home, Mason reiterated that he would never let Susan come near us again. He also apologized to me because his mother had messed up big time. We talked about the issue and decided it would be best if we never kept in contact with Susan again. Cody followed through on his promise of divorce. Within a week, he had the papers ready. Because of a pre-existing prenup, Susan was going to get nothing from Cody. She threw a fit and even called Mason for help. She got so unhinged that Cody came to stay with us. Later, Susan actually showed up at our house and demanded to be let in. When we refused, she kept shouting at all three of us. "How dare you choose Sarah over me? I'm your family and you easily picked an outsider. I'm your wife, Cody. You can't do this to me. Mom, you need to leave. We don't want you on our property. Dad doesn't want to speak to you," Mason said. "He has to speak to me and so will you. I will never let you two walk away from me. Your witch wife won't take you away from me. I will make sure she disappears forever. I won't let her steal my family. Susan, you need to leave our property now. We don't feel safe around you, especially now that you're threatening me," I said firmly. Susan absolutely lost it and started kicking our door. She even managed to break a window with a pot from our garden. Things got so bad that we called the police. Immediately, she was arrested and taken to the station. All three of us then filed for trespassing and harassment. We even got restraining orders against her. It has been almost a year since the incident happened. Let me just tell you, she is not my mother-in-law anymore. We were able to get emergency restraining orders against her. The neighbors saw everything, and our security cameras recorded the whole event. She was charged with trespassing and had to pay us for the destruction of property. Cody was also able to get divorced from her fairly recently. She has not contacted us due to the restraining order. Cody is still living with us, and we don't mind it at all. All of us needed to heal, and staying together helped a lot. Currently, Mason and I are expecting a child. We're happy, and so is Cody. He does have his bad days, but the excitement of having a grandchild is making him better. My business took off even more after I got numerous orders from the party. The recommendations brought in more orders. I have to say, Susan did me a favor. She removed herself from my life and boosted my business at the same time. Hello, I'm Sandra, a 42-year-old woman who has gone through a lot in life. Today, I want to share how I became a single mom when my kids were very young. I met my ex-husband, Harry, through mutual friends. We hit it off pretty well. He was everything I had ever dreamed of. Both of us had good jobs and were financially stable. Though I had no contact with my family, Harry's parents welcomed me with open arms. He checked all my boxes, so of course I said yes when he proposed after 3 years of dating. Harry was always open about his desire to start a family. I wasn't the biggest fan of having kids, but I wanted to make Harry happy, so I agreed. However, once my kids were born, I knew I had made the best decision of my life. Initially, Harry was an amazing father and husband. He took care of us, sometimes to the point of neglecting himself. I truly thought I had hit the jackpot with him. But then, out of the blue, a couple of years after we had both kids, things started going downhill. He had a new coworker join his team, and they began hanging out a lot. From the start, I did not like the look of his coworker. He seemed like a bad influence. My gut feeling was right because pretty soon, Harry was ignoring me and the kids. He would come home from work and lock himself in his room to play games. I tried talking to him repeatedly, but he never listened. We would have heated arguments when the kids weren't around. He complained about me pushing too many responsibilities on him and being a nag. The thing is, I wasn't asking him to go above and beyond. I just wanted him to do something, considering he was doing absolutely nothing at that moment. One day, Harry asked if he could take the kids to the park while I was at work. He had a day off and wanted to bond with them. I was filled with so much joy at the prospect of Harry returning to his old self that I readily agreed, not thinking about my kids skipping school. While I was at work, my father-in-law, Dave, called me. It wasn't unusual for him to call and check in, so I happily picked up, but he sounded upset. "Sandra, are you at work?" he asked. "Yeah, is everything all right? You sound upset," I replied. "Well, Maria and I were on our way back home from the grocery store when we saw the kids at the park." "Oh yeah, Harry said he'd be taking them there." They were alone. Lacey was crying, and Jax was trying his best to calm her down. "What? Oh my God, are they okay?" "Yeah, we picked them up, and they're sleeping right now." "Do you know where Harry is or how long they were there?" Jax said Harry had taken them to the park around 10 in the morning, and we picked them up around 12. Apparently, Harry had dropped them off at the park and just left. "That man is going to get a piece of my mind," I said, seething with anger. "If you manage to get through to him, let him know that his parents also want to have a stern word with him," Dave added. "You haven't been able to get through to him?" "Nope, his phone is switched off." "Okay, I'll try to get a hold of him too. Until then, I hope it won't be an issue to watch over the kids until I get back." "Of course not, honey. We'll make sure they eat when they wake up." "Thanks a lot. I don't know what I would do without you two." I managed to stay kind and grateful even though I was raging inside. Once I was off the phone with Dave, I immediately dialed Harry. Just like Dave said, Harry's phone was switched off. I don't know how I managed to get through the rest of my workday. I kept making phone calls to Harry, but never got a response. Once I was done with work, I decided to go home first. I hoped that Harry was just at home playing some games. I know it's pathetic, but I still hoped he had only left the kids in the park to play his stupid games. I called Dave and informed him about my plan, and he assured me it was all right. I didn't want my kids to see me getting angry at Harry if he was actually at home. Harry and I had been struggling for a while, but I didn't want my kids to think the toxic aspects of our relationship were normal. When I got back home, I immediately noticed something was different. The house felt emptier. I had a sinking feeling in my chest as I ran through the house, yelling for Harry, but he was nowhere to be found. With each room I checked, my panic grew. When I didn't see him, I went down to his den in the basement and saw it was completely cleared out. That's when I felt a full-blown panic attack coming on. Harry had an elaborate gaming setup, and I knew he wouldn't have moved it anywhere else in the house because we didn't have the space. I carefully walked up the stairs, feeling myself slowly losing my breath. When I got to our bedroom, I noticed all his clothes that had been piled in a corner of the room were gone. I went through his nightstand, and it was empty. Our shared wardrobe was also empty. The bathroom had been cleared of all his products. None of his things were there. He had left us. I was struggling to breathe. How was I supposed to raise 2 kids on my own? How would I survive on my income alone? If I had to pick up another job, I would have no time to spend with my kids. In my panic, I kept calling Harry. At that point, I didn't care about my dignity or ego. I was ready to beg Harry on my knees to come back. But of course, none of my calls went through, and my messages didn't either. I must have been blocked. With nothing else to do, I managed to calm myself down enough to make my way back to my car. I hoped Dave had been able to get a hold of Harry. My heart raced faster as I got closer to Dave and Maria's house. I knew I had to put on a brave face in front of the kids. My kids greeted me at the front door. I hugged them and did a quick once-over to check if they were okay. They looked happy and fine, and I felt a little relieved. They told me all about their day, and for a second, I forgot about my huge problem. Maria sensed my unease, so she had the kids leave the room to play in their playroom. She came back to the living room with a glass of water. Dave, Maria, and I sat on the couch and began to discuss everything that had happened. "Did you manage to talk to Harry?" Dave asked. "No, I don't know where he is, and I'm freaking out," I replied. "What's wrong?" "I went back home, and all his stuff is gone." "Gone? What do you mean gone?" "Gone as in there's no trace that he ever even lived in our home. All of his clothes, his toiletries, his gaming things, everything's just gone." "You think he left you?" "I hate that he's done this. I'm going to teach him a good lesson if he does come back." "That is not how I raised my son to behave," Dave said sternly. "Do you have any idea where he may be?" Maria asked. "Well, there are his friends' places and some of his usual haunts, but other than that, not really." "Okay, well, let's start by talking to his friends and then looking around the places he usually visits. If nothing turns up, we'll go to the police." I really did not want to get the police involved in this matter, so I tried calling everyone we knew. I even managed to find some of Harry's high school friends and asked if they had seen him around. Maria and Dave contacted their relatives and neighbors to find any information. We even went around the city looking for him. During this time, I had to juggle the kids and work. I was lucky enough to get a week off when I explained my situation to my boss. Dealing with my kids was a lot tougher. Every single day, they asked where their dad was, and I had no real answer to give them. I told them he was away on a business trip, and then they would ask when he'd be back. Thankfully, Dave and Maria had my back when it got too overwhelming to juggle everything. Eventually, we did get the police involved. However, they said they couldn't help because he left on his own accord, so he technically wasn't a missing person. Everything shattered at that moment. I didn't know how to proceed. Maria and Dave also seemed to be in a trance, just like I was. I felt so betrayed and abandoned. What happened to all of Harry and my promises? Our promise to stay together forever, to raise our kids to be great people, to go on a date every 4th Saturday of the month. I spent every night crying myself to sleep after that. I couldn't even face my kids because how could I tell them that their dad had run away from us and left us? Dave and Maria came over one night to check in on me. After I had put the kids to bed, I broke down crying in front of them. Before I knew it, the 2 of them were crying too. We just held each other for a little while until we stopped. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cry this way," I said. "There's every reason to cry. You've lost a husband, and we've lost our son." "We get what you feel," Dave said. "Yes, that's why we keep coming over." "I guess somewhere inside we feel guilty for his behavior," Maria added. "You have absolutely no reason to feel any guilt. He was the one who made the decision to abandon us, and he's responsible for it," I reassured them. "Yeah, but maybe it was the way we brought him up that made him this way," Dave said. "Nonsense. I know you brought him up well because you are here right now. You could have also left us alone since your son is not here, but you've chosen to be here to take care of us and help me out," I insisted. "You're right, we can never leave you guys. Your family," Dave said. "Precisely, Sandra. I want you to remember that we're family. We want to help you and the kids out in any way possible. Don't hesitate to ask us, okay? Maria said. Of course, I replied. After that, we slowly grew out of the hurt and misery. I somehow managed to break the news to my kids about their father's abandonment. They seemed to have an inkling that their father was never coming back because they were eerily calm about it. They only asked if their grandparents and I were going to leave them too. I assured them we would never leave, and for the first time, I didn't feel upset at Harry. Instead, I felt rage towards him. He had shown my kids what abandonment felt like, and now they were going to be cautious about it for a while. But my in-laws and I tried our hardest to do only the best for them and show them that we were never going anywhere. The kids continued to thrive, and I began to see them returning to their happy, bubbly selves. Around 5 years into Harry's disappearance, I stopped checking up on him. I had been religiously trying to contact him until then, but one day I realized just how long 5 years was. Harry had missed a lot of firsts with his kids, and they had all but forgotten about him. I didn't see any reason to want him back. 10 years after Harry left us, things were going well for us. Jax got into his dream college with a full ride, and Lacey was acing all her classes. I was earning enough for us to live more than comfortably. Maria and Dave were practically living with us because they were getting older, and we didn't want them to be on their own. They were struggling with their health, their bones hurt, and they had issues with their blood and sugar levels. I dreaded the thought of losing one of them. They had been my rock during the hardest times, and I wanted them to enjoy the good times with us. It took years for all of us to adjust to our new lives, and I wanted them to enjoy it to the fullest. It was no real surprise when Dave got very ill. Maria and I took turns staying at the hospital when Dave slipped into a coma. It was a hard time for all of us. For a long while, there was no laughter or smiles in our home. However, things changed when Dave finally woke up. Though he was still very weak and sick, he was alive. When we were told that despite being awake, he still didn't have much time left, the entire family spent time with him at the hospital. Dave made peace with the fact that he wasn't going to be around much longer. He uplifted the mood somehow, even though he was very weak. He insisted on having his lawyer come so he could rearrange his affairs and rewrite his will. When a lawyer was in the room, none of us were allowed in. "I'm sorry I couldn't let you guys in," Dave said weakly. "Oh dear, it's okay. Just get your rest," Maria replied. "I just wanted to surprise you guys." "That's awfully sweet of you to think about a surprise for us right now, Dave." "Of course, you know how much I love surprises." "We really don't want this surprise for a while, though, dear," Maria said gently. "At least this way, there will be something to look forward to. I just have one condition for you." "What is it?" I asked. "You have to stick to what's written in the will. Promise me that no matter what happens, my estate will remain divided the way I've arranged it." "Of course, dear. I promise everything will be as you wanted it to be." About 2 weeks after he woke up, Dave passed away in his sleep. I was a mess. He was like a father to me, the only man in my life who was there for me and helped me learn and grow. He was also a father figure to my kids and greatly helped me raise them. Maria and the kids were devastated too. We all lost someone very dear to our hearts. I took the initiative to handle all the paperwork and funeral services because I knew Maria didn't have the strength for it. The funeral took place 3 days after he passed away. A lot of people attended, and it felt good to see that Dave was loved by so many. At that moment, I did feel a pang of anger. I was sure that Harry must have found out that his dad had passed away. I even had Dave's obituary published in the newspaper, but he still never showed up for the funeral. Then again, if Harry did show up, I didn't know how I would have reacted. Perhaps it was better that only the people who truly loved and cared for Dave were there. The next few days after the funeral were spent grieving some more. During this time, we also got access to Dave's will. We were pleasantly surprised by it. Dave had divided his estate between the 4 of us, giving a lot more to the kids, which I was super grateful for because they needed it more than Maria and I. However, he had also left something for Harry, a letter. I was desperately wanting to open it and read it, but I knew it would be a violation of Dave's wishes as he had made it explicitly clear that only Harry was to read the letter. I wish I could say that I wasn't surprised when Harry showed up, but I really was. Thankfully, Jax had gone back to university and Lacey had been away at school when Harry appeared. When I saw his face, I was filled with rage. Maria felt the same. He looked barely alive, malnourished, with bones jutting out and eyes huge on his now small face. He had a lot of muscle before, but now his arms and legs looked like twigs. His voice was raspy and his eyes were bloodshot. I had a very strong feeling that he must have spent the last few years abusing substances. Alright, let me tell you about my life and how I managed to stay true to myself despite the constant criticisms from my ex-husband, FY, and my mother-in-law, Susan. I'm Zara, a 32-year-old woman, and I'm proud of my career in pottery. It's not the typical 9-to-5 job, but it's my passion, and I absolutely love what I do. Sure, I might not be rolling in money like some of my friends, but I've achieved success in my niche, and that's what matters to me. Avi and Susan, on the other hand, never really understood my work. They thought it was childish and not a real job. Whatever that means, it was disheartening to hear them make snide comments about my passion, but I refused to let it get to me. Pottery is more than just a job to me. It's a form of art, a way to express myself, and I take pride in creating unique pieces. But FY and Susan didn't see it that way. They thought I should be doing something more professional and respectable. It didn't help that Susan, due to her physical disability, had to live with us. I tried my best to be understanding and accommodating, but it was hard when she kept judging my choices and making me feel inadequate. FI wasn't much better. He would often bring up the fact that my friends were all high-earning professionals while I was just playing around with clay. It hurt to hear him belittle my passion like that. One day, we had a conversation that still stings. I was talking to some of my friends the other day, and they were discussing their wives' careers, FY said. Oh, what were they saying? I asked. Most of their wives have high-paying jobs and successful careers. It got me thinking about us. What do you mean? I mean, compared to them, your career is a bit, well, odd. Working with pottery and all that. It's not exactly the typical high-paying job. Are you saying my job is less valuable just because it doesn't make as much money? No, that's not what I meant. I just meant that it's a bit embarrassing sometimes when people ask what you do, and I have to tell them you're a potter. Embarrassing? You're embarrassed by my passion and my hard work. It's not like that. I'm proud of you and what you've achieved. It's just that sometimes I wish you had a more conventional job. So, you're saying you'd rather I give up my passion and do something I don't love just to fit into your idea of a perfect wife. I just wish people would see how amazing you are and not judge you based on your job. But you're the one judging me, FY. You're the one who's embarrassed by my career. I guess I just wish people would see it the way I do. It was a lame excuse for an apology or trying to be supportive as he was claiming. Stupidly, at the time, I let it slide. I regret doing that because later on, I learned how he really felt about it. One evening, I had just finished working on a particularly intricate pottery piece when I overheard FY and Susan talking in the living room. Their voices were hushed, but I could still make out what they were saying. FI chuckled and said, "Can you believe she spends all day playing with clay? I mean, come on, that's not a real job." Susan joined in, "I know, right? It's like she's stuck in some child's playtime while the rest of us are out there making a real living." Their words stung, and I felt my heart sink. I knew they didn't understand my passion, but to hear them belittle my job behind my back hurt more than I expected. I took a deep breath and decided to confront them. Walking into the living room, I put on a brave face and said, "Hey, I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. I just want to remind you that pottery is my career, and it means a lot to me. It might not be the traditional 9-to-5, but it's what I love doing." FY looked taken aback, and Susan tried to backpedal. "Oh, sweetie, we didn't mean to offend you. It's just that we worry about your future and financial security." I shook my head, trying to stay composed. "I appreciate your concern, but I'm doing well in my field. My work is gaining recognition, and I'm proud of my accomplishments. I wish you could see that." FY seemed uncomfortable. "Look, honey, we just want what's best for you. We're not trying to put you down, but we worry about the stability of your job." I sighed, feeling a mix of frustration and hurt. "I understand that, but it's my passion, and I'm willing to take the risks. I've worked hard to get where I am, and I won't let your doubts hold me back." "We're just looking out for you, dear," Susan said. "It's not that we don't support you, but we want to see you thrive in a more traditional career." I appreciated their concern, but it was clear they didn't truly understand my passion. Instead of arguing further, I decided to let my success speak for itself. In the following months, as my pottery projects gained more recognition and I received invitations to showcase my work in art exhibitions, I noticed a change in FY and Susan's attitudes. They began to acknowledge my talent, though their support still felt hesitant. I knew I couldn't change their views entirely, but I hoped that with time they would come to understand and respect my career choice. Despite their negativity, I didn't let it deter me. I love my job, and that's all that mattered. I knew I was good at what I did, and I had the respect of my colleagues and clients. That's all the validation I needed. Whenever they made snarky comments, I would just smile and shrug it off. I knew they didn't understand my passion, and that was fine. I didn't need their approval to be happy. What's even more amazing is that my pottery started gaining more recognition. I started getting featured in magazines and art exhibitions. My unique style and authentic approach to my work were finally getting the attention they deserved. Of course, FY and Susan couldn't ignore the success forever. They might not have fully appreciated my work, but they couldn't deny that it was bringing in money, and that seemed to be the only thing that made them somewhat okay with my career choice. As the years went by, I continued to excel in my field. I learned to tune out their negative comments and focus on what truly mattered, my passion and happiness. It wasn't always easy, but I was determined to stay true to myself. I had my ups and downs, but my dedication and hard work paid off. I was able to carve a niche for myself in the pottery world, and I couldn't have been prouder. Well, guess what, folks? All of my hard work and dedication paid off. Let me tell you what happened next. After all that hard work, I finally got a major investor interested in my pottery. I was over the moon. The investor told me he'd pay me $33,000 a week for my work, and I was thrilled. That's some serious cash. I couldn't wait to share the news with FY and Susan. I thought they'd be proud of me and finally see the value in what I do. When I got home, I was practically bursting with excitement. Hey guys, you won't believe what happened today. I got a big break in my pottery career. Remember that investor I was telling you about? Oh right, that guy. What happened? FY asked. Well, he said he'd pay me $33,000 a week for my work. $3,000? That can't be right, Susan scoffed. No, let me finish. He said $33,000. $3,000 as a salary is a joke, Zara. How ridiculous. No, it's not a joke. Pottery is my passion, and this investor sees the value in my art. It's a real opportunity for me. A real opportunity. Come on, Zara. This is ridiculous. You need to be realistic. You'll never make it big with pottery. They were getting on my nerves, trying to speak over me and diminish my accomplishments. For some reason, they just didn't want to hear me when I wanted to tell them I'd be making $33,000 per week. They kept cutting me off, assuming it was my monthly or yearly salary, and boy, were they not impressed. They started shouting at me, telling me that my job was stupid and useless. Can you believe that? It was like a punch to the gut. It's not about making it big or being rich. I love what I do, and this offer means I can sustain myself doing what I'm passionate about. Sustain yourself? You're 32, Zara. It's time to grow up and get a real job, not some childish pottery nonsense. Their harsh words stung, but I knew better than to let them affect me. It's not childish nonsense. Pottery is a legitimate career, and I've worked hard to get to where I am. Why can't you just support me? Because we know better, Zara. You're wasting your time and talent on something that will never work out. You don't understand. This is my passion, my dream. I thought you both would be happy for me, but all you do is belittle my work. Your work will never be enough. You should focus on something more practical and profitable. This is my life, and I won't let you two dictate what I should do. I'm proud of my career, and I won't let your negativity bring me down. Well, good luck with your little pottery fantasy, but don't come crying to us when it all falls apart. They went on about how they had to be honest about where our relationship stood now that I wasn't making the big bucks. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All this time, they never really appreciated the hard work I put in or how much I loved what I did. I felt so unappreciated and hurt. It's not like I was trying to be rich or anything. I just wanted them to understand and support me, but instead they were just focused on the money and couldn't see the passion and fulfillment my work brought me. Then they said something I would never forget. FY and Susan told me they didn't care about our relationship anymore because I might not make as much money as they expected. It was like they were putting a price tag on our marriage. Look, Zara, we've been thinking about this for a while now. If you're not going to be making the money we thought, then there's no real reason for us to stay together, FY said. That's right, Susan added. We can't be associated with someone who's going to be struggling financially. It's just not acceptable. Are you serious? You want a divorce just because of money. It's not just about money, but it's a big part of it. I mean, I've been wanting a divorce for a while, but I thought your income would at least make things easier for me financially. I can't believe you're doing this. I thought we had a real connection, a real relationship. Well, relationships change, honey, and if you can't provide the lifestyle we want, then there's no point in staying together. So it was all about money for you too. You never really cared about me, just what I could bring to the table. I mean, it's not the only factor, but it's a significant one, FY admitted. I can't believe I married someone who values money more than love and connection. I'm disgusted. Love doesn't pay the bills, Zara. You'll understand that one day. Well, I'd rather have love and passion for my work than a marriage based on materialism and greed. Fine, have it your way. I'll file for divorce and we can all move on with our lives. Good riddance. As FY and Susan left the room, I felt a mix of emotions. I was hurt, angry, and heartbroken, but I also felt a sense of relief. I realized that I deserved better than to be with someone who only cared about money and didn't appreciate me for who I truly was. It was time for me to focus on my career and my passion and surround myself with people who truly valued and supported me. As painful as it was, this divorce was a chance for me to embrace my authentic self and find happiness on my own terms. After I left the house, I had a mix of emotions: hurt, anger, and relief. FY and Susan seemed kind of embarrassed and guilty for how they treated me, but it was too late to take back their words. The damage was done, and I was ready to move on. I called up my lawyer friend right away to speed up the divorce process. I wanted to be free from FY and his toxic mom ASAP. Luckily, we both agreed on a mutual divorce with no alimony involved. FY and Susan were surprised and laughed, thinking I'd be homeless without their money, but I reassured them that I'd be just fine. So we all sat down in that lawyer's office, ready to sign the divorce papers. FY and Susan looked so pleased with themselves, like they were finally getting rid of the crazy me. Well, I wasn't going to let their smugness get to me, especially since I had a lovely surprise for them once I finished signing the papers. When I finished signing, they jumped for joy, saying they were free from my antics. Finally, we're done with all this stupid drama. Free at last, FY exclaimed. Oh, thank goodness. No more dealing with her and her weird pottery stuff, Susan added. You know, you both seem really happy about this divorce, I remarked. Well, wouldn't you be? Now we can move on with our lives without your eccentricities, FY said smugly. Well, I guess the feeling is mutual, I said. Oh, please, don't try and act like you don't need us, especially now that you're broke, Susan scoffed. Oh, trust me, I'm more than happy to be rid of you two clowns. Clowns? How rude, FY snapped. Rude? Maybe, but I don't mind being rude to people who are beneath me. Beneath you? What are you, stupid and deaf? Susan sneered. Okay, enlighten us then, FY demanded. Well, for starters, I've got some pretty exciting news. You see, that night when I told you I'd be making $3,000, you didn't let me finish my sentence. I'll be making $3,000 per week. FY and Susan's jaws practically hit the floor. Their faces went pale as they realized the mistake they had made. The kind of money I'd be making could afford me a whole new life and easily cover Susan's medical expenses. Talk about a mic drop moment. I couldn't help but smile at the shock on their faces. It felt so good to turn the tables on them. I was finally free from their toxic attitudes and the constant belittling of my passion. Wait, $3,000 a week. Are you serious? Yep, dead serious. But we thought you were going to be poor without us. Yeah, you both seem to have a habit of underestimating me. I didn't mean, it's just that pottery, it's not a stable career. Pottery is my passion, and I've turned it into a successful business. Guess you missed that part. We didn't realize. Yeah, you didn't realize. You never took the time to understand or appreciate my work. You were too busy belittling it. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just thought. You thought wrong. You both thought wrong about a lot of things. Zara, we didn't know. We were just worried. Worried? You were worried that your precious image would be tarnished by having a wife with a strange career. Well, guess what? You lost more than just a wife and a daughter-in-law today. Good luck paying all those medical bills without me. Zara? Favorite, it's too late now. I've moved on, and I'm happier without you both in my life. Both of you are pathetic. Fury and Susan exchanged glances, looking regretful for their actions, but I had already made up my mind. Even if I changed it, the divorce papers were already signed. That was the sweet part of this all. Both FY and Susan had to just accept the fact that they threw a good woman away. I stood up, ready to face my new life without them. Susan made a sad attempt at crying, trying to gain sympathy. It was actually quite hilarious. I couldn't help but laugh right in their faces, fascinated at how cruelty can lead to downright stupidity. As I walked out of that office, I held my head high, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. I was ready to embrace my new life, one where I wouldn't be dragged down by their negativity. And you know what? Life without FY and Susan turned out to be pretty damned amazing. I focused on my pottery work, pouring my heart and soul into it. And you know what they say, do what you love, and the money will follow. Well, it sure did for me. My pottery project started gaining traction, and I started getting more and more clients. That $3,000 per week turned out to be just the beginning. I was earning even more than that, and I was damn proud of it. I moved into a cozy little apartment and finally felt at peace. I surrounded myself with supportive friends who appreciated my work and encouraged me to keep going. Meanwhile, FY and Susan were left to deal with the consequences of their actions. I heard through the grapevine that FY's finances took a hit because he squandered it on some shady business deals. I guess he was trying to get rich quickly and it didn't pay off. The sad part was that Susan was struggling with her medical bills. Part of me wanted to feel some satisfaction in their misfortune, but I realized that I had moved on from all that drama. I was too busy building my own happiness to waste any more energy on them. So the moral of the story is, don't judge a book by its cover. Just because someone's career doesn't fit your idea of success doesn't mean they aren't making bank. And sometimes the people who look down on you end up eating their words. Life is too short to be weighed down by toxic people. Find your passion, embrace it, and surround yourself with those who uplift and support you. Trust me, it's a recipe for happiness and success.